Okay, so today's video, DIY fuel filtration kit, the third battery or the driver's side kit we refer to it. The reason we say that, there is a couple of different options. Let's jump over to the car, we'll show you where it mounts and its purpose and if it's fit for you, and then we'll jump into getting it installed. So let's check out the engine bay. Okay, so in the engine bay here in the 200 series, when we say the driver's side or the third battery, the location for this kit is mounted into here. We use the factory bolt holes. This works if you don't have a Pro Vent. If you have a Pro Vent, this fuel kit isn't going to be suitable for you. And it is the fuel kit if you have a battery mounted on the passenger side. So there is lots of different aftermarket accessories, and you need to make sure what fuel kit you're purchasing is going to fit in your engine bay. So before you buy it, check out it's going to be fit for the application. So let's open the box up and we'll run you through the contents. So first thing, going to have the fuel hose, plenty of that. Got the 5-micron filter head with the pre-fitted barbs on it as well. Going to have all our hose clamps and fitting kit, stainless steel bracketry, and the most important one, which I'll explain to you when it's on the vehicle, is the support strap. Just want to make a note as well, this is the only fuel kit on the market that actually uses this support strap. What that actually does is it stops this bracket from moving around and flexing on the inner wheel arch. I'll explain that and show you on the vehicle once we've got it fitted. Okay, so we've got the instructions, we've checked the contents, we've had to read over the instructions front to back so we know what we're walking into and what, we've got everything ready to do the job. We're not going to pull the car apart and have to put it back together. We're missing something or don't have the appropriate tools. So first things first, we're going to get into the car, we're going to mount the bracket. That's what the first step is. So on this step here, we're going to mount the fuel bracket into the vehicle. So let's jump over to the car, I'll show you where that mounts. Okay, so we've come into the far corner in the driver's side of the vehicle. You'll see down here, we've got the mounting holes. I've just got the bracket sitting there, and it's going to pick up those factory nut certs in the bodywork and the inner wheel arch. And obviously as well, the support bracket, when it's in place, is going to bolt to this hole here. And we're going to take out the 10mm or the M6 threaded bolt here and the horn support, and we're going to put that on and then mount the fuel kit. So we're going to take out the air box just for visual, for filming purposes, so you can actually see what we're doing a lot easier, because it is a bit tight in this corner. So the air box is out of the vehicle now. You can clearly see here that we are going to be mounting the bracket there. We've got two M6 threads. Just going to start them nicely by hand. We can do them up. Sometimes as well, I just want to note, the threads, they are the underbody sealer in the wheel arch. Sometimes depends how that's been applied, but it can be in the threads and they can be a little bit, tight or a bit stiff to get in, but just be gentle with them, make sure they go in. Sometimes you may need to clean the thread, put a little bit of grease on it. Because once you've done this, if you look on the underside, you'll notice that it's pushed the underbody sealer out. And once we've done this step, bolts. So I was talking about our kit has this support bracket. A lot of other kits on the market pick up on this bolt hole, but by getting the 3 bolt holes, it still doesn't benefit anything on the guard. This support bracket here, however, in our kit marries up behind that and it stiffens the whole lot up. And then the reason why we don't want this bracket to be moving around is because what happens, this moves with corrugations in the real world. We've seen it happen in customers' cars, and this is why we've made and manufactured our own kits to suit real world testing. So that's why we put this support bracket on there. So we'll go ahead and put that on there now. Another thing I want to note as well, this bracket here, it's got a hole in one end. The hole goes towards the horn end. And we are replacing the bolt just with a slightly longer bolt, just so we know we've got enough thread there. .10mm quarter drive. This nut here with a 10mm spanner. You'll see now it's nice and rigid. Nothing's happening here. It's still got a little bit of movement, which it does need to have a bit of movement, but we're not going to have any problems with this bolt head moving towards the brake fluid reservoir. So we'll go ahead and we'll get the fuel head ready to bolt on, and we'll just prep that over on the bench here and I'll run you through that. Okay, so we've got the 5 micron filter, the 30 micron with the fuel head with the barbs that are pre-sealed in here. Obviously got the high flow barbs in there as well, so we've got plenty of fuel flow. What we're going to do is take off the bowl off the bottom. Once again, I want to just a special note, there's an O-ring seal here. You need to make sure that stays on the bottom of the bowl on this installation and when you are servicing the fuel filter in the real world. What can happen is over time with a bit of heat in the engine bay, that O-ring sticks to the fuel filter body. You undo the fuel filter, you change the fuel filter, you discard that, you screw this back up, it starts and runs, and then all of a sudden it sucks air the next morning. You've got problems trying to get the vehicle to start. So quick tip, just make sure that's on there. It is a serviceable part as well. If you do lose it, we do stock them. So another one, this black ring here, I'm just anti-clockwise pulling the filter down once I've undone that ring. Now there is a keyway here as well that for the new filter to line up. I'll show you that in a second. Just take the wrapping off the filter. Obviously as well, I'm going to take the new little cock valve off the bottom of the filter and that little seal. You can keep that as a spare part as well if you do want to, because there is one here. Now, when I was talking about that little keyway that lines up with the filter housing, when you look in the filter housing, you're going to see a large slot there, lines up with the filter here. So, and literally the filter just pushes up nicely. There's an O-ring in there, it seals. There's quite a coarse thread that this plastic ring goes on. You're just going to hear it click. That line there is going to end up about here. So there we go. And that's up tight. And then when you undo it, anti-clockwise, same steps in reverse. So now we're going to get the water trap at the bottom here. We're going to screw that up. Trying to do it so you can see it. So it all goes down nicely. 2 hands, screw it up, ready to go. So we're now ready to take this over to the vehicle. Going to take the M10s, 2 nuts and bolts. You're going to need 2 14mm spanners, and we're going to mount this into the vehicle. So fuel filter, just going to line up with the top holes in here. We're going to slide the bolts in from behind and hang them out this way. We don't want the bolts to be out the other side. I'm going to put them out here. Now these brackets as well, when we've designed them, there is a little bit of elongation in the holes, or slots in the holes, so the filter can move. If you have got other SBIs or anything, other accessories mounted in here, there is a degree of movement we do have, so you can move it around. You're going to obviously mount that what's going to suit your fit up or your particular vehicle, how it's modified. Now the reason I want to note as well why we have these fuel hoses coming out this way. A lot of other fuel kits on the market may have them coming out the back, but as you'd see down here, there's not much room for the fuel hose to come around the back. Now the fuel hose can fit around the back, but now the problem is you've trimmed the fuel hose up, so it's coming around the back of the intercooler, it's coming into your fuel filter. You want to change your fuel filter, you've undone the bolts, you've lifted it up, you can't actually lift the fuel filter anywhere. When we have the hose around the top of the airbox, you can undo these 2 14mm, pick the filter up, drain it, put it back in. You're not having to disturb anything else, And as well, it's a good time to check your air filter as well. So check both, just something I want to point out, but we'll show you that as well as a finished result once we've fitted it off. It's just something I want to make a note of at this point in time. Okay, so to do this job properly or correctly, what we're going to do is we're going to run the fuel hoses from the fuel filter. We're going to come around here and we're going to tuck in behind the intercooler. What we see in the industry is people just pushing fuel hoses behind the intercooler, not zip tying or securing them. So what I recommend and suggest in our kits, we remove the intercooler and we secure the fuel hose behind the engine. So we just want to make sure the job's done properly. So next step, we're going to remove the intercooler so we can secure the fuel hoses correctly in place. So first step, we've got a 10mm quarter drive. We're going to undo these two little 10mm nuts on the top, and we're going to take the dress cover off the intercooler. This is a good little step as well as a maintenance point of view. If you are traveling and you want to clean the intercooler, definitely don't ever clean it with a pressure cleaner, but a little bit of compressed air or get the leaves off. This cover comes off nice and easy. While you've got the 10mm as well, what you want to do is come and loosen the intake to the intercooler hose clamps. So we can just pull that one off there, and then the other one on this side. This aircon hose does move down a little bit if it's in the way. So once we've got these out of the way, next step, we're going to get a 12mm socket on here. Over in the back in the corner over here, there's two more 12mm on the back up there, and over this side there's two 12mm flange nuts as well. Flange nuts here as well, that they're all to hold the intercooler down, and there's two long studs or bolts that hold the rear of the intercooler down, along with two sensors, a map sensor and a charge intake temperature sensor. They're probably going to be a better view of showing you that once we've got it, the intercooler off the vehicle. We'll run you through how to connect them and disconnect them. So we'll go through under the 12mm socket head bolts and nuts, and then we'll lift the cooler up and we'll show you what we're dealing with. This one down here is a little bit of mucking around to get to, but I'm not sure if you can see. But this trim here does lift up and then click back down as well, so there is a little bit of movement there. My biggest tip would be take your time. Don't drop nuts and bolts, because you'll spend longer time finding them wherever they drop. So you're better off taking a little bit longer to get the right tools and what have you to do the job. And this one here, just a 12mm on top of an extension. And flick him out like that. Now there's two connectors, you might be able to see them. There's a black one down there, black connector just here, and then there's a grey one over here. So if you can get your hands down there small enough to disconnect them to start with, it's always easier. Otherwise we can lift the intercooler up a little bit and give you a little bit more room. Sometimes, depending on how long the intercooler's been on the car, you might need to get a tool just to break the rubber seal to the metal pipe, just so you can loosen and it comes up nicely. This one here is a little bit tight to get up, but once we've got it moving, there we go. The main thing you want to be careful of is you're not going to damage any of these fins. So you are going to lift it up. This side's off. And you could do with an extra set of hands. It can make life a bit easier. So we've got that sitting forward enough now. I can get my hands behind. Just get the juggling act. There we go. And get to these connectors. Okay, what we've got here, so the connectors are all undone. Now there is a boost hose at the bottom of the map sensor. So we just want to pull that down lightly, and then the cooler is away. and we'll show you the connectors on the bench, how to disconnect them. So we've got the boost hose off, all the connectors off. If you had a look around, I'm just going to lightly lift up the intercooler and away we go. And what I want to run through is this connector here. You're coming underneath and you're pushing that tab there, and you'll see it, there we go, you can see it open up. So that there on this one was facing down. The sensors are screwed in, so they're going to be in slightly different locations. The map sensor connects on this way. You're squeezing on this black tab here. I'll show you, and that opens it up. When I was talking about the map sensor, the boost sensor, that plugs into the bottom of it. So end result is fuel hose is going to come along here, and we're going to pin it along this brake line. So it's all secured out of the way. What I'll do is I'll just run you some footage on the intercooler, and you can see what the back of the intercooler looks like, because obviously you can't see much behind it when it was in situ. So now at the bench, intercooler, this is the back of the car, front of the car. This is the grey connector, the charge air temp sensor. That's what I'm saying, squeeze it, pull it back. The map sensor, the one you want to be careful of is when I lift this up, is this little dig here that rubber hose goes onto, so you don't snap that off. Quite an expensive sensor. So just take your time, be careful. If it hasn't been off before, or the car's never been apart, sometimes the rubber hose does stick to metal and plastic fittings, so just be gentle with it. Sometimes you can just twist it lightly. So let's get the fuel hose in the car, and then we'll get the intercooler back on the vehicle. So just following the instructions, next step, what we're going to do, we've got the intercooler off. Now we're going to plumb in all the fuel hose. So first of all, we want to locate the factory fuel hose from the fuel tank, which is this hose coming into the fuel filter, because we can see this one here is the one running to the engine, or normally it's clipped into that. So this is the fuel supply to the engine. We want to take this hose off of here, and also further down, if you can see, I might be able to point it out to you, down, literally follow the other end of this hose, and there's another hose clamp there. You can come to it through the wheel arch as well, might be easier to see. We're going to take this hose out altogether. So one end of the hose is going to supply the fuel filter, so it's going to come from the pipe down there from the fuel tank along the back. We're going to secure it along here, all the way over to the fuel filter, into the fuel filter, out of the fuel filter on the driver's side, back along, and we're going to end up into the factory fuel filter. Then it's going to go through the fuel filter back to the engine. So let's get all that plumbed up, and we'll run you through once it's installed. So at the moment you're just looking through the engine bay, through the wheel arch, and it's this hose clamp you can see just here with my hand around. So you can just get a pair of pliers or pincers, take that off, and get access to that and tighten the hose clamp up. So I've just gained access with the long nose pointy pliers. What we can do here is we'll try to give you as best view as we can with the camera. It's pretty hard to get in there. You can put my hand down there and give the hose a bit of a twist. Like I was saying, the rubber will stick. So I've just given the hose a little bit of a twist, and then my little trick here as well is put a thumb over the end of the hose, hold a bit of vacuum in it so you don't get diesel out, then pull it up and the diesel stays looped in the hose. If you have a look down here now, you'll see, should be able to clearly see the one that's got the hose removed from it. So I'll put my hand through the wheel arch. It is this guy right here. So that's where we want to connect to. Okay, so we've got the length of fuel hose. I've just put the hose clamp on. We're going to push the hose down. I'm going to put the clamp on this way so it faces out, so I can get to it with a flat bladed screwdriver if we are out on the tracks through the wheel arch. So literally, but once I'm done for the time being, so I don't drop the clamp, I'm just going to feed it further up the hose. Try and do this so you can actually see what I'm doing. And the hose is reasonably firm enough, you can push it on. and you're going to see it's going to hit the elbow of the hose, and it doesn't really need to go any further. You've definitely got it on enough. Put your hand down there and feel the hose is well over the barb, so that you've got a good sealing surface for the clamp to mount on. We've got about 1 inch of hose onto that pipe, so we're definitely safe there. Well, now I'll just get a flat blade. I'll just do this up because we've got a lot of slack in this hose clamp. I want to get it so it's sort of a little bit snug, so I want to get it down there. It's less work. I've got to try and tighten it in an awkward position, so I'll just get a flat blade. Okay, so we're just coming through the wheel arch, and I've positioned the hose clamp where I want to have it, and you'll notice I'm doing it with a flat blade. That's because, generally speaking, if you're out on the tracks, someone is going to have a flat blade screwdriver. Sorry, I'm trying to talk and concentrate. And alright, done the forefinger. We've got that nice and tight. We're going to go up top and just check that hose is nice and tight around the pipe and doesn't twist, and then we'll route it across to the other side. So we'll go back up into the engine bay. So we've just come up and we've given the hose a bit of a twist rotational test, and the hose is nice and tight with the EFI hose clamp on it. So that's that hose done. We're going to get the other end, the spare end of the hose. So if you want to pass it on, thank you, Aaron. We're going to put that side by side, and we're going to plumb it on to the inlet to this fuel filter, put a hose clamp on it as well in a serviceable position, pin the hoses off, and we'll head over to the other side of the car. Okay, so I've just put the first zip tie in a position here. We are going to have a HPD catch can mounted in this particular vehicle in the build we're doing here at the moment in the shop. So I'm just trying to guide you where to put the hose, but obviously it'll be nicer just to go straight across here, but I don't want to make the hose too short, and then later on I've sort of got to snake it around some other accessories in the vehicle. So be mindful of that if you are going to fit other things. It's always nice to have a little bit more length. You can always trim it back and do something else with it. So we'll just give ourselves a bit of room to work with. And this is the pipe I'm talking about working with. So come around that guy. And I generally leave all the zip ties loose so I can get it exactly where I want it and then tighten it last. Okay, so another little tip as well, put the zip ties around somewhere where you've got plenty of room to work with. Obviously it's going to end up, this zip tie is going to end up down that way. I'm just putting it somewhere where I can slide it along. Because down here, it's a bit tight for space to try and get your fingers to start a zip tie. Once they're started, they're easy to work with. And we'll put another one there, and we'll put another one on here. And then what that's going to do is stop the fuel hose bouncing around. Okay, so first thing that I'm going to do here, the hose has got a bit of a twist and a curl in it. I'm just going to chop it directly in half. I am using hose cutters. Can use a Stanley knife or something that's going to cut the rubber hose nicely. Now, fuel hose and the orientation and which way around it goes. So you'll see if we follow the two hoses, the bottom hose, as you get over to where we connected first, is from the fuel tank. So when we follow that, we know we've got the bottom hose over here, which is this one. We then refer to our instructions, and it says from the fuel tank. So we've got our bottom hose from the fuel tank. If you're a little bit unsure, put the instructions in the picture the same orientation as the fuel filter head, so like for like. So we're going to now trim this hose up in a position where it fits with the intercooler, the air box in position, and we'll put an EFI hose clamp on it, and then we can start priming it up. We've done the first hose, so now obviously it's just a direct copy. The top hose is running from this filter back over to your factory fuel filter because it's the only hose left. So we'll get that done. So airbox back in the vehicle, and like I was mentioning before, we just want to find a nice loop in the hose, and we're going to cut it just here, just behind the PDP logo on the fuel hose there. Now, once again, this hose clamp I'm going to put that way, and this one I'm going to put that way on there, so they don't end up trying to fight each other on the inside. There is clearance, but however they can get a bit on top of each other, so let's just put that the right way around. Blade screwdriver. And right before I get the hose clamp tight, I need to rotate the hose. When you turn the hose, you'll see how it makes it relax or sit on things differently. So it's just nicely there, whereas if I turn it the other way, it's all, what do you say, stressed and fighting itself. So there, I can rotate it a touch more, and it's just nicely in place. Alright, second hose is just going to follow it. Look, the hose as well is going to be a little bit stiff because it hasn't been used, hasn't been exposed to any engine bay temperature. So once it's been warm and then cooled in the engine bay, it's going to start forming the shape and position where you have routed it through the engine bay. So I've just marked it with my thumb there. So you don't want to cut your finger. Once again, hose clamp, the right position. Push that back. Push it on the barb. Look, we've got the barb and the hose size pretty much smack on. You'd almost get away with not running a hose clamp. However, once again, these fuel kits we designed, we use EFI hose clamps, and I will explain them to you in a second once I've done this up, and I'll show you how they're not perforated band clamps. They're perforated here for the worm drive to do up, but underneath the important bit that's actually putting a circular clamp around the hose, it's not biting into the hose. So when I say that, see here, it's a full band, it's perforated in here, but this little tang that's there comes around that when you start to pull the clamp up. So that means it gives you a full circular clamp on the hose around our barb. So we know we're never going to get any air sucked into the fuel system, fuel starvation and hard starting issues. So in the video earlier on, I mentioned as well, when we undo these, haven't done these tight yet because you can move them to where you want, is you can undo these, lift this filter up, change filter, put it back down. Same thing, air cleaner. Yes, it is over the air cleaner box. You still can get to it to service it all. It just means you're servicing everything and it's easy to get to. So yeah, what we'll do now is in reverse, we can prime the fuel system up and we can put the intercooler back on and we can start the engine up. Okay, so last things, like I've been mentioning, flush cuts. Just going to go along. Snip all your zip ties back nice and flush. Okay, so just a little point I want to make as well. You'll see with the intercooler, I've got the intercooler off the engine, I've got the intakes to the engine over here at the back, 2 outlets out of the turbo. Now, yes, you could put rags, stuff them in here, other blanking plugs in there. Look, I haven't made a workbench of the engine bay. If you're using a tool, you use it, you put it down. If you drop something, you find it, you don't, oh, I can't find that, don't know where it is. Look, if you do put anything in there to stop things going in the engine, just be mindful that it can cause a lot of damage if a rag does get sucked into the engine. So just bear that in mind and do what works for you. Look, I have just put this fuel kit in the vehicle from start to finish, so I'm not starting it one day and finishing it a week later. If you are, well, that's a totally different scenario. So, you know, I'm starting the job and finishing the job, so that's something I just want to bring to your attention. Just be mindful of rags. So before we put the intercooler on, the last step, what we're actually going to do is we're going to prime the fuel system. So the supply line from this filter, that actually clips in there, runs down here to supply the engine. We're just going to thumb and forefinger I'm going to pull that clamp off, or sorry, slide the clamp back, then give the hose a bit of a twist. You'll see a bit of residue diesel coming out. I'm going to put that into a container. Just unclips off all those clips, and then you're going to sit here and you're going to see a little bit of air and foaminess of the diesel coming through. Then nothing's going to come through, and then once again it's going to go foamy, and then it's going to come through as clear diesel with no air in it. That's when we'll reconnect it to the engine, and I find this is the easiest point in time to remove this hose and put it back on. Otherwise you've got to try and get under the intercooler, and it's a bit more mucking around. So might as well make life easy for you, or easy as possible. You can hear it starting to come through, and you'll feel the primer starting to get firmer as well. And I generally say, what's this container? 300 mils, I think it is. Once you've pumped that much through from start to finish, you're generally going to say, you can see there, most of the diesel coming through is air free. Slide that back on, thumb and forefinger, clip these in. These little plastic things here, they do rotate as well. Clip them back in. Then last of all, and then the primer's gone firm. So once you've got the cooler back on now, you'll be ready to start. So it'll be job done.